After 5 years of struggle, he discovers his 500M inheritance, his ex-wife's shocking reaction. Jake's heart raced as he sat on the dusty attic floor, rain tapping on the roof like nature's own urgent knock. Today felt different. As he rifled through boxes filled with old family mementos, a yellowed envelope, almost glowing against the surrounding shadows, caught his eye. He tore it open, and his breath caught in his throat. 500 million. An inheritance from a relative he'd never even heard of. The weight of the news sent shivers down his spine. Could this be the end of his financial struggle? An escape route for his 2 kids from their humble life? The enormity stung with both excitement and fear. His fingers trembled as he thought about what this money could mean. But just as quickly, a tight knot formed in his chest. He could already imagine Emily's reaction, burning anger mixed with pulsing disbelief. They had fought tooth and nail to navigate co-parenting, and now this fortune felt like a wild card thrown into their already tangled lives. Thoughts of their shared past flooded his mind, holding hands in high school, dreams of building a life together, and now this absolute turn of fate. Later, as night wrapped around the quiet town and the garage lights flickered on, he replayed those emotions like a movie in his head. When he finally confronted Emily with the news, her expression shifted. Shock faded to fury, a tempest brewing behind her brown eyes. "How could you keep this from me, Jake?" she spat, her voice sharp like broken glass. The town buzzed with every whispered rumor. Friends speculated, and old neighbors leaned in closer, eager to catch a glimpse of Jake's newfound fortune. He could feel the weight of their judgment and curiosity pressing down. Should he simply share the windfall? Invest in their kids' future? Or help revive local businesses? The pressure was relentless, echoing around him like a tightrope walk without a net. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days turned into sleepless nights, wrestling with the ethics of wealth while bills piled up. Emily's simmering fury often clashed with Jake's guilt. Were they not supposed to rise together from the ashes of their broken marriage? Should he elevate their lives and risk tearing apart whatever was left of their bond? He tossed and turned, each decision cutting deeper into his mind. Then suddenly, Emily stormed back into the garage one hellish night, her fury shaking the air between them. "Do you even care about us anymore? Or is this all about you feeling like a hero?" Her voice was fraught with desperation and frustration. In that moment, all felt lost. The countless hours in the garage, efforts to be a good father, ripped apart with words. Just then, a loud crash echoed from outside. The kids froze at the doorway, their eyes wide with confusion, unwitting witnesses to their parents' unraveling. Jake's heart dropped as he realized he had to face not just the question of wealth, but a deeper dilemma hanging between the two of them. Could they both come together, or would this inheritance tear their family apart? The air felt charged, heavy with hope, pain, and the looming decision that could reshape their lives forever. Jake stood there, his heart racing against the silence that followed Emily's outburst. The tension crackled between them, a palpable force fueled by years of hurt and unspoken wishes. His kids watched, their innocent faces reflecting back every unfiltered emotion. "Listen, Em," he started, trying to find words that could bridge the widening chasm. "I didn't know this would happen. I never asked for this. I just want the best for us, for the kids." Emily's scoff interrupted him. "You think throwing money at problems is the answer? What about us? We've barely managed to communicate since the divorce, Jake. You think this will suddenly fix everything?" The accusation hung in the air, sharp and cutting. He could almost see the memories of their struggles swirling around the room. Every late night spent balancing budgets, every time they agreed to disagree for the kids, it all came rushing back. He swallowed hard and took a step forward, wanting to hold her, to calm the storm in her eyes. But would that be welcomed or met with the distance that had grown between them? Can't you see? Jake whispered. This could change our lives. It could give the kids a chance at a real future, a better one than we could ever provide. Her face softened for a brief second, but the walls rebuilt quickly. And what about our life? The life we fought for together? Jake glanced at his children, their quiet presence making his heart ache. Can we really keep trying to raise them in a place of struggle? Don't you want more for them? The kids shifted, sensing the intensity. Just like that, their world began to feel like a pressure cooker, hissing with emotions that threatened to boil over. Emily opened her mouth to respond, but at that moment, their youngest, Lily, broke the silence. Daddy, are we getting a new house? Can I have a horse? The simple question tore through Jake like a knife. His children had dreamed of brighter days, free from worry. The realization hit him like a freight train. This inheritance could be a fresh start, but at what cost? Sweetheart, we can talk about it later, Jake reassured her, but he felt hollow. The thought of spending a fortune didn't bring the joy he expected. All he could see was the fractured pieces of his family swirling around him. Emily turned away, her shoulders tense. I need time to think. This changes everything, Jake. She walked toward the door, pausing briefly. You have to realize this inheritance isn't just a windfall. It's a choice we need to make together, or it might just tear us further apart. With that, she walked out, leaving Jake standing there, grappling with the weight of her words. Doubts swirled in his mind about what was right. Money could change their lives, but could it mend the wounds of a broken family? Hours later, after the kids had gone to bed, Jake found himself staring at the envelope once more, its promise gleaming under the faint light. This wasn't just money, it was a crossroad, a decision that could either unite or divide them. He knew he had to act, but the specter of Emily's fury and the weight of every shared memory loomed large in his mind. What if, in chasing a dream of wealth, he lost the heart of what really mattered? He picked up the phone. The decision needed to happen soon before it was too late. He dialed Emily's number, heart pounding in his chest. Emily, he breathed as she answered. We need to talk. This can't just be about the money. I want it to be about us too. But from the other end, silence reigned for a heartbeat too long, leaving Jake with a fresh knot of anxiety twisting in his gut. How would she respond? Would he finally steer them toward healing or plunge them deeper into chaos? As the clock ticked away, the uncertainty loomed larger. Would their story be rewritten, or would the past hold them captive? Jake stared at the phone as if it were an alien device. His heart thudded loudly in the quiet room. What had he expected? An eager response? A reassurance that everything would be okay? The weight of his words hung heavily in the air, and the silence stretched on as he listened for any sign of her voice. Finally, he heard her soft sigh. Jake, I just can't. The weariness in her tone tightened something inside him. Please. You don't have to decide right away. Let us meet, talk it all out. We can figure this out together. The hope in his voice sounded shaky even to him. Together? She repeated, a bitter edge in her voice now. How can we talk about together when everything feels so broken? You remember how we were before the divorce? How we started drifting apart? Jake let her words wash over him, bringing back memories that stung like salt on fresh wounds. He remembered the times they had laughed together, the family dinners that turned into arguments, the days when simple joys seemed luxurious. Of course I do, he replied, fighting to keep his voice steady. But we have a chance now, this inheritance, it gives us the opportunity to rebuild. A clean slate, Em. You think you can just throw money at it and make it all go away? It doesn't work like that. Even through the phone, he felt her frustration pulse like a live wire. Each word was a reminder of the choices that had led them here, choices they'd both made. He needed her to understand that the inheritance was a lifeline, something to build on, not a curse to burden them. Maybe it doesn't erase everything, he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. But it could lead us to a better place. A place where we can work on what's broken. All I see is a reminder of everything we lost, she finally whispered, her voice breaking. And I don't know if I can look at that without it tearing me apart even more. The tears he couldn't shed in front of his children threatened to spill now. He pressed a hand to his forehead, as if he could block out the anguish that came with every realization. This wasn't just about the money. It was about dreams and hopes they once shared. "Emily, please," he pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. "I want to try. For the kids, for us. Just give me a chance. We don't have to make any decisions now. Just let us meet tomorrow. Can we do that?" There was a pause that felt like an eternity. "Fine. Tomorrow. But I don't promise anything. Just promise me we'll talk, really talk." "I promise," she said softly. There was a flicker of something different in her tone. Acceptance? Or was it resignation? Jake hung up, feeling a tiny seed of hope trying to take root. He spent the night tossing and turning, his mind racing with possibilities and scenarios. Would Emily see the potential in this new life? Would they find a way to heal? These thoughts swirled endlessly, but one simple image pierced through his: girls, laughing, running in a yard of their own, a rhythm of happiness unfurling around them. The morning sun broke through the curtains and Jake rose, the promise of a fresh start shining ahead. But as he prepared for their meeting, an unsettling thought nagged at him. What if Emily wasn't ready to embrace this change? What if she still harbored resentment that kept them tethered to the past? The prospect loomed large, turning his stomach into knots. Jake grabbed the car keys, the weight of tomorrow pressing down on him. Everything rested on this conversation. As he stepped outside, his resolve steeled. A single question echoed in his mind: could this be the day they began to weave their broken pieces back into something whole? Or would it be the final thread that pulled them apart completely? With uncertainty in his heart, he drove toward the meeting that could change everything. Would it lead to an answer, or merely to more questions? The small coffee shop buzzed with activity when Jake arrived. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with sweet pastries, but it was all lost on him. He felt like he was stepping onto a stage where every gaze was a judgment, every whisper a reminder of what was at stake. Jake found a corner table, pretending to enjoy the view of the street outside while his mind raced. He looked at the clock on the wall, the seconds ticking down like a countdown to something monumental. His palms were sweaty. He wiped them on his jeans, rehearsing his words in his head. He wanted to be calm, soothing, anything but desperate. But was that really possible? Suddenly, the door swung open, and there she was. Emily walked in, her light hair catching the morning sun pouring through the windows. Despite the warmth of the day, she wore a long-sleeved sweater, her arms wrapped around herself as if she needed protection. Jake immediately sensed her tension, the very air between them crackling with unspoken words. They locked eyes for a moment, a fleeting connection that slipped away as quickly as it arrived. She approached the table slowly, taking her own seat across from him. The silence that followed was thick enough to slice through. It felt overwhelming, yet somehow familiar, like an old song that stirred long-buried emotions. "Thanks for coming," Jake finally managed, forcing a small smile that felt foreign. Emily stared down into her coffee, swirling the liquid as if awaiting answers to profound questions. I didn't know what else to do." "I get that," he nodded, his heart racing. "This is hard. For both of us. What are we even doing here, Jake?" She looked up, vulnerability etched in her features. "It's not as simple as just meeting up and pretending everything is okay. Right?" He drew a deep breath, steadying himself. "But what if this is our chance? I don't want to pretend. I want to be real about what happened, about what we can do moving forward. I'm not sure I can look at you and not feel hurt." Her voice trembled slightly. "I have so many questions, and you're talking about rebuilding that because I believe we can," he said, the desperation creeping back. "That inheritance could give us a chance to build something new. A home for the girls. A fresh start. Don't you want that?" "What I want is for the tears to stop, Jake. I want to not feel like a chess piece in a game where I'm always expected to sacrifice." She raised her eyes, fierce and challenging. It hit him harder than he expected. She was right. Their lives had been like that, moving pieces, constant sacrifices without ever considering their own hearts. He was taken back to the night they had sat across from each other, talking before the walls came up, before they were both too afraid to be vulnerable. "Emily, I miss the days when we shared dreams," he admitted softly, his voice thick with emotion. "The world felt brighter then. I want that magic back for our girls. For a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of recognition in her gaze. A tiny shift towards acceptance. But then the shadows returned, glooming over them both. I don't know if I can trust that dream anymore, she said, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her cup. Trusting you has hurt me, but what if we don't run away from our past? What if we confront it together? We can't control the decisions we made, but we can choose how we deal with them now. His heart pounded against his ribs, open and raw. Emily looked away, her jaw clenching. Her silence screamed louder than any words they could have exchanged. Jake felt as though they were standing at the edge of a cliff, the wind howling around them, ready to either leap into the unknown or retreat back into safety. Please, say something, he urged, desperation leaching into his tone. After what felt like an eternity, she whispered, her voice more fragile than ever, what if what we're trying to rebuild isn't what we really want? The weight of her question hung heavily in the air, threatening to drown him in uncertainty. How could they navigate this next step if neither of them had the map? He opened his mouth to respond, to reassure her that they could find it together, but no words came. Instead, he felt a shiver run through him, a premonition of unavoidable truth looming just beyond their reach. As he searched her eyes, the question echoed in his mind, were they ready to truly face what lay ahead, or were they destined to remain stuck in the past? Jake felt the chill of Emily's words settle in the pit of his stomach. He needed to respond, to say something, anything, but the weight of the moment kept him anchored to his chair. Outside, the world moved on, cars whizzed by, and people chatted, wrapped in their own lives. But here, in their little bubble, time stood still. Emily, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. How can we know what we want if we don't talk about it? She looked away, biting her lip as if deciding whether to share more. The tension hung like thick fog, wrapping around them both. I used to think that the dreams we built together were enough, Emily began, hesitating before continuing. But over the years, it turned out they weren't. Maybe that's why I've had such a hard time trusting this whole fresh start idea. He nodded, realizing there was truth in her words. They had both lost sight of what they once wanted. Their dreams had faltered under the weight of regrets and expectations. What if we try again? What if we dig deep and find out what we really want together? That's asking a lot, she countered, her gaze piercing through him. How do I know it wouldn't lead to more hurt? We can take it slow. Jake felt a surge of determination. We don't have to rush into rebuilding anything. Let us explore what we want from scratch, without any pressure. She took a deep breath and held it, eyes locked on the swirling coffee in her cup. Jake couldn't help but notice the way her fingers curled tightly around the warm ceramic, trembling slightly. It was as if she was holding on to her fear, unwilling to let it go. But the girls, she murmured, her voice cracking. What if they end up getting hurt in the process? They already know we're struggling. They sense the distance between us. If we're honest, if we find a way to communicate, they might see us working things out. Isn't that what we owe them? Emily pulled her hands back, resting them in her lap, the gesture feeling like a small step away from the edge of uncertainty. I want them to feel safe. I want them to feel like they belong, no matter what happens between us. That's exactly why we need to approach this together, Jake replied, the warmth of hope igniting in his chest. What if this could be a new foundation, a way to show them that love can evolve? Her silence stretched, but it didn't feel as stifling. There was a flicker of acknowledgement in her eyes, a glimmer of willingness to engage. He could feel the barrier slowly crumbling. Okay, she finally said, her voice steadying. But no promises, just honesty. Can we do that? Jake felt a rush of relief wash over him like a wave. Yes, that's all I'm asking for. For a brief moment, the chatter from the shop faded into the background as they shared a tentative smile. But just as quickly, doubt returned, casting shadows back into the corners of their hearts. Can I ask something? Emily's voice was quieter now, almost hesitant. Anything. Why now, Jake? Why this sudden need to reconcile? Her gaze was firm, interested yet guarded. Jake leaned in, the gravity of her question pulling him closer to the truth he had been avoiding. I found out about the inheritance. It's a lot of money, and it could change everything for us. But honestly, I don't want it if it doesn't come with you. I want to build our family back, not just a bank account. Her eyes widened in surprise. That's a big revelation. But it's also a lot of pressure. Maybe, he admitted. But it's the truth. As the words hung in the air, a strange tension filled the space between them, a mix of hope and fear. Jake felt the urgency of the moment swell. What lay ahead could either anchor or unravel them. Emily wiped a single tear from the corner of her eye, and in that flicker of vulnerability, Jake knew they might finally be on the brink of something new. But would they be able to confront the history that threatened to overshadow their future? Just as he opened his mouth to speak again, the bell above the cafe door jingled. A new arrival caught their attention, changing the atmosphere yet again. What did this newcomer mean for their fragile conversation? Jake's heart raced. Would they lose their moment, or would it be the catalyst for the truths they truly needed to face? A figure stepped into the cafe, shaking off the cold from the wind outside. Jake's heart quickened at the sight of a familiar face, Dan, one of their old family friends. He hadn't seen him in years, not since things had started to crumble between him and Emily. Dan paused, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on Jake and Emily. "Hey there," Dan called, his voice bright and cheerful. "What a surprise. Mind if I join you?" Jake glanced at Emily, her expression torn between gratitude for the distraction and annoyance at the timing. She offered a polite smile, a clear effort to mask her tension. "Sure, Dan. We were just having a chat." Dan settled at their table, a steaming cup of coffee in hand. He didn't miss the palpable tension, though. "You two look deep in thought," he said, eyebrows raised playfully. "Don't worry, I won't bug you too much. Just wanted to catch up." "Good to see you," Jake replied, doing his best to keep the conversation light. "Things have been interesting." "Interesting is one word for it." Dan chuckled, taking a sip from his cup. "So, any plans for the holidays? Heard you got a bit of a cash windfall?" Jake's stomach twisted. He hadn't told many people about the inheritance. "Well, it's still up in the air," he said, choosing his words carefully. "Just trying to figure things out right now." Dan nodded, a knowing look in his eyes. "That's fair. A lot of people would love to have that kind of news, you know? Starting fresh could be the change you both need." Jake caught Emily's eye. She seemed to be holding her breath. "Change," she echoed quietly, her fingers tapping lightly on the table. "That's what we're trying to figure out." A silence settled, thick with unspoken words. Dan picked up on it quickly. "It's good to have support when making big decisions. You two have been through a lot. If you ever want to chat or need a sounding board, I'm here." "Thanks, Dan," Jake replied, feeling an unexpected warmth spread through him. "It means a lot." The weight of Emily's gaze made him squirm. He wanted to share everything, his plans, his hopes for their family. But here they were, stalled by the resurfacing questions of their relationship. Just as he started to speak, Dan set his cup down again. "Speaking of change, I think we all have things we wish we could do differently. I remember when I had to make some tough calls. You know, leaving a job I'd settled into for years to pursue my own passion." Dan's gaze drifted for a moment, lost in thought. Jake watched him, recognizing that spark of determination. "Any regrets?" he asked, eager to pull Dan back in. "Regrets? No. Lessons, yes. But we can't change the past. All we can do is decide what to do going forward." Emily shifted in her seat, her expression open. "That's true." Jake's mind raced. "What if we made a list? Not just of what we want, but everything we've learned from our mistakes. What has held us back and what we really want for the girls." He turned to Emily, a spark of excitement lighting his voice. "Could that work?" She blinked, seeming to process the idea. "Maybe it could. But it's going to take a lot. We need to be transparent about our feelings." "Absolutely." He felt the weight lift just a little, hope shining through the cracks of uncertainty. They could do this together. The thought energized him. "See? It sounds like a solid plan," Dan said, joining their moment of clarity. "But also remember, take care of yourselves amid everything." As they exchanged enthusiastic ideas, Jake cast a quick glance outside. The sky had darkened, twilight settling over the town. The cafe's cozy atmosphere felt like a blanket wrapping around them. An unexpected spark ignited in Jake's chest, a feeling he thought had faded long ago. It was hope, flickering but real. But before he could say more, his phone buzzed in his pocket. A text. He took it out, realizing with a jolt it was from his lawyer. "Need to talk. Urgent." It read. For a moment, the excitement vanished. What could be so urgent? He felt the weight return, compressing every ounce of optimism. "What's wrong?" Emily asked cautiously. "I don't know. Yet?" He trailed off, glancing from Dan to Emily. Jake's hands felt clammy as he stared at the screen. Was this news going to shatter the fragile hope they had begun to rebuild? He looked back at Emily, seeing worry reflected in her eyes. Just as he gathered the courage to explain, Dan's phone buzzed, cutting through the moment with its sound. Feeling the ground shift beneath him, Jake wondered, could this unsettling news unravel everything they were beginning to stitch back together? Jake's heart raced as he read the text again. The urgency of his lawyer felt like a weight pressing down on him. Would this bring more chaos into their lives, or could it somehow lead to a turning point? Dan leaned in, sensing the tension thickening the air. "Hey, maybe it's good news? You said something about inheritance, right?" "Yeah," Jake replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "It could be. Or it could just complicate things further." Emily shifted again, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Complicate? How? Is it about the money?" "Not just the money," Jake said, shaking his head. "It's everything that comes with it. The responsibilities, the decisions. It's unsettling." Dan tried to lighten the mood. "Hey, if it's a fortune, think about what you could do." "New opportunities, a fresh start," Emily interrupted, her voice firm. "But Jake, this isn't just about money. We need to think things through carefully. If this changes our lives, it could also change our girls' lives." Her words hung in the air, infused with a sense of gravity. Jake felt the weight of her concern, the way everything they'd been trying to rebuild was now precariously balanced on this unexpected message. "Right. You're both right," he sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. I want to do what's best for us, for the girls. I don't want this to become a source of tension. Money can make things messy." Dan nodded, lifting his coffee slightly. "True enough. Just remember that having it doesn't change who you are or the love you have for each other." "That's the thing," Jake said, his eyes darting back to the phone. "This could create a gap between us if we're not careful. We've worked so hard to mend things." Emily's expression softened, yet her eyes still held that flicker of worry. "Let us not rush into anything. Can we read the message first, figure it out together? We should know what we're dealing with before making plans." Jake nodded slowly, grateful for her calm direction. "Yeah, okay. I think I need to call him. It might be important." He glanced back at Dan, whose usual lighthearted demeanor had shifted into something more serious. "You sure you want to take this now?" "I think I have to," Jake murmured, looking at Emily's encouraging smile. He pressed the number to call, feeling a mixture of dread and hope filling him. As the phone rang, he glanced outside. The street was shimmering under the streetlights, but all he could think about was the uncertainty looming over them like clouds about to unleash a storm. "Jake?" came the lawyer's voice, sounding clipped. "I was expecting your call. I have news about the inheritance." "Right?" Jake swallowed hard. "What is going on?" "The inheritance is significant beyond what you anticipated. But there are strings attached. I'll need you to come in to discuss what all of this means." Jake's heart raced at the implications of those few words. He cast a furtive glance at Emily and Dan, their expressions a blend of curiosity and concern. "Strings?" he repeated, his voice thick. "Conditions that could affect your custody arrangement and more," the lawyer continued matter-of-factly. "It's critical that we go through the details as soon as we can." Jake felt the ground shift beneath him again. Every dream he'd just started to envision with Emily and their girls, a fast cash windfall, was suddenly entwining itself with what felt like potential heartache. He ended the call numb. "There are conditions," he managed, looking at Emily. Her brows furrowed as she began to process what that could mean. Dan leaned forward, concern etched on his face. "What kind of conditions?" Jake's voice caught in his throat. The kind that could tear us apart if we aren't careful. A silence fell, thick with the weight of what was to come. Is there a possibility of losing what we've started to build? Emily whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Jake took a deep breath, the answers to the questions swirling in his head. I don't know yet, he admitted. But what he did know was this: whatever the terms, they'd have to face them together, even if the path ahead looked shaky. He felt his phone vibrate in his pocket again, and with that jolt, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was still to come. What if the inheritance came with hidden costs, not just financially, but also emotionally? The thought made him uneasy, and he knew there was so much more waiting just around the corner. As he glanced at Dan and Emily, a question loomed larger than ever. Would their bond be strong enough to withstand the unfolding storm? Jake sat frozen on the couch, the weight of the moment pushing him deeper into the cushions. He could see Emily's gaze shifting between him and Dan, trying to bridge the gap of fear spreading like a shadow in the room. What implications could this have? Emily began, her voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. What kind of conditions are we talking about? You said custody. Is this about the girls? He looked at Dan, who remained uncharacteristically quiet, arms folded. I don't know. The lawyer didn't go into detail. But if it affects our custody, it could change everything again. Emily's expression tightened, a mix of disbelief and concern pouring from her eyes. We can't let this happen, Jake. Not after all we've been through. Jake took a deep breath, feeling the air in the room chill. I know. I didn't expect any of this. I thought I'd be able to provide more stability, not throw everything back into uncertainty. Let us keep it together, Dan said, breaking the silence. His tone was cautious but firm. You both have built something special. You can't lose sight of that just because of money. Easier said than done, Jake countered, his voice rising slightly. Money complicates everything. You both saw how it drove a wedge between our families before. What makes this time any different? Emily reached forward, placing her hand on Jake's. It's about trust, Jake. I trust you and I believe we can get through this. We just need to communicate, figure things out together. He nodded, the warmth of her hand spreading through him like light cutting through darkness. You're right. We can't let this inheritance dictate our lives. We'll take it step by step. Just as he spoke the words, Jake's phone buzzed again, breaking his moment of resolve. He glanced down and saw a message from his lawyer. Meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. We need to discuss the consequences of accepting it. Don't be late. A knot formed in his stomach. It's tomorrow morning, he said, showing the screen to Emily and Dan. Dan shifted forward, concern etched in his brow. What are you thinking? I guess we need to know what we're truly getting into. But the thought of it, what if it's not just money? What if it's something that digs up old wounds? Emily squeezed his hand tighter. We'll face it together, no matter what. This isn't just about the money, it's about us and the girls. Jake looked into her eyes, seeing the strength and determination that had drawn him to her all those years ago. But if it threatens what we've built, we fight, Dan jumped in, his voice resolute. You didn't come this far to let something external break you apart. With a heavy sigh, Jake leaned back, worry weighing on him. What if I need to decide between the inheritance and us? What if it really pulls us apart? The thought hung in the air, turning heavy like a storm cloud ready to burst. Silence enveloped them, and Jake could feel fear creeping back in. What if tomorrow brought more uncertainty? What if he had to choose in a way he couldn't bear to imagine? As the night wore on, the three of them sat together, lost in thought, but bound by a familiar hope. Jake knew, deep inside, that the true wealth wasn't in any inheritance. It was here, in this room, with Emily, and in the life they had fought for. Uncertainty still loomed, but Jake felt the strength of their connection, his heart aching with a cautious optimism. He could see the darkness lurking at the edges of this new chapter, but he also saw the light that had brought them this far. The next morning would bring critical choices. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Jake's mind raced. Would he be brave enough to face what was coming? And then he wondered what truly mattered in the end? The money? The choice? Or the love that had kept them standing? Tomorrow, everything could change. Little did he know, all choices come with a price. Morning light filtered through the blinds, casting soft patterns across the room. Jake blinked, still tangled in the threads of sleep and anxiety. He turned to Emily, watching her peaceful expression. Just a few hours ago, they were wrapped in the warmth of each other's promise. Now there was a looming storm on the horizon. He slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her. The house was quiet, filled only with the distant sounds of birds chirping outside. But in his mind, chaos swirled. He paced the kitchen, his mind racing. What if the inheritance led to more heartache? What if it reopened scars he thought had healed? Gathering his thoughts, he poured himself a cup of coffee. As the rich aroma filled the air, he searched for clarity amid the turmoil. Could he really put the past behind them? He had struggled to rebuild a life after the divorce, and that path had been filled with uncertainty. Now, the thought of potential money brought old fears to the surface, like ghosts that refused to fade. He took a deep breath, inhaling the steam rising from the cup. Just then, Emily entered the kitchen, her hair tousled, eyes still hazy with sleep. "Hey, she said, her voice soft and soothing. "Hey," he replied, forcing a smile. He didn't want to burden her with his worries just yet, not when she looked so serene. As Emily poured herself a cup of coffee, he felt her gaze. "What are you thinking about?" "Just everything." He hesitated, searching for the right words. "The meeting with the lawyer is today." She nodded, concern flickering across her face. "You'll figure it out. We'll figure it out." The strength in her voice felt like an anchor. Still, doubt lingered. Jake had faced challenges before, but this felt different. The idea of money had a power that could just as easily unravel what they had built. Jake sat at the kitchen table, his fingers brushing over the cool surface. "What if this changes everything?" he said quietly. "What if it drives a wedge between us?" Emily sighed, her expression turning serious. "Jake, we can't let that happen. We have to talk honestly with each other. This isn't just about the money, it's about our future and the girls. We have to confront whatever it is head-on." Just as he opened his mouth to respond, his phone buzzed again, its shrill tone cutting through the moment. A quick glance revealed another message from his lawyer, crucial details about the terms of the inheritance. His stomach twisted, anxiety bubbling to the surface. "Is everything okay?" Emily asked, concern etching her brow as she noticed his sudden stillness. "No, it's just a reminder from my lawyer. I can't help but wonder what's ahead." She reached across the table, taking his hand. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together. We've done it before." The promise in her grip strengthened him, yet Jake could almost hear the ticking clock in his mind. As the minutes passed, he felt the weight of the day ahead settle on his shoulders. "Let us get through this morning, and then we'll talk about everything else," he said, trying to quell the uncertainty brewing inside. They finished their coffee in contemplative silence, a shared moment of solidarity holding them together. The sun was rising higher, casting warmth across the kitchen. Eventually, Jake pushed his chair back, determination igniting within him. "All right, let us do this." But as he stood, an unsettling thought snared his mind again. What if today revealed truths that felt insurmountable? What if the inheritance was accompanied by chains rather than freedom? Merciless questions clouded his heart as he headed toward the door, feeling the flutter of apprehension in his stomach. With Emily by his side, he felt slightly bolder, but deep down he wrestled with the realization that this path would not be easy. Their love would be tested, and he was scared of what lay at the end. "Jake?" Emily's voice pulled him back. "Yeah?" he replied, turning to face her. "Promise me, no matter what happens today, we keep talking." "Always," he assured her, even if doubt lingered in his chest. As they stepped out into the morning light, Jake glanced up at the sky. It was an ordinary day, perhaps one that would change everything. But in that moment, he was left wondering, what would he find when he faced the truth? Would it bring them closer, or push them further apart? Jake sat in the lawyer's office, heart pounding like a drum in his chest. The walls seemed to close in, echoing with a tense silence. Emily sat beside him, her fingers gripping the edge of her chair, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. A stark contrast to the hope he had felt just days before, The lawyer, a stern woman with sharp glasses, shuffled through papers while Jake and Emily exchanged anxious glances. "So, I presume you're both aware of the potential windfall," she began, looking between them with a serious gaze. "Yeah, but there's more, isn't there?" Jake prompted, a knot tightening in his stomach. "Indeed. The inheritance isn't simply a cash gift, there are conditions tied to it." Jake's breath caught. He leaned forward, drawn into the gravity of the moment. "What kind of conditions?" She folded her hands. Primarily, the estate holder had specific intentions for the wealth. It involves funding a community project and educational center to help families in need alongside stipulations about how you manage your time with the children. Emily gasped, covering her mouth in disbelief. "This is about the girls?" The lawyer nodded. "Yes. They must be at the center of your plans. Participation in the project is mandatory if you wish to access the full inheritance." The weight of her words hit Jake like a tidal wave, crashing over the hopes of freedom and financial relief he had envisioned. "Wait, so you're saying we'd be obligated to give back?" "Not just that, but you'll need to show proof that you're committed to your children and the community before you can access the funds," she clarified. Jake felt his heart drop. Emily turned to him, her eyes wide with concern. "What do we do?" He swallowed hard, the constricting emotion clawing at his throat. Could this be the universe pressing them to confront what really mattered? "This isn't just about us anymore," he said slowly. "It's about making a real difference. Maybe this is the path we're meant to face together." Emily studied him intently, and he could see the flicker of realization in her eyes. "This could bring us back to what we once dreamed about." "Right," Jake said, his heart racing. "Helping those who need it, and maybe even creating something for the girls to be proud of." The air hung heavy between them, fear mingled with newfound hope. The lawyer shuffled her papers and continued explaining the project details, but Jake felt a spark ignite inside him. When they finally left her office, the sun shone brightly outside, illuminating their path. The heaviness of the morning transformed into something else, a sense of opportunity. They walked in silence, processing what they had learned. "Are we really ready for this?" Emily whispered suddenly, breaking the tension. Jake stopped, turning to face her. "I don't know. But what I do know is it's better than being stuck, better than fearing the past." Emily nodded thoughtfully. "And we can do this together, right? We don't have to figure it all out at once." "Absolutely," Jake replied confidently. "Let us take it one step at a time." Their conversation flowed more freely as they walked, ideas bubbling up between them. The more they spoke about the potential project, the more Jake realized they were reawakening a connection focusing not on what they had lost, but on what they could build. Hours later, as dusk fell, they settled on the porch with the girls, who played contentedly in the yard. The weight of their decision felt lighter as they watched their daughters giggle and chase fireflies. "Can we really give this a shot?" Emily asked, glancing at Jake as Lily and Sophie squealed with joy. "Yeah, let us show them that dreams can evolve. We can create a solid foundation for us and for them. Together?" "Always together," he reinforced, taking her hand. And as twilight wrapped around the house, Jake felt a calm enveloping him. The uncertainty that had loomed earlier transformed into something different, something empowering. They would face the project, the challenges, and even the turbulence of their past as a united front. Not only for the sake of the inheritance, but for their children, their love, their future, and the possibility of weaving old dreams into new ones. This was their moment, a chance to begin anew. Together. And in that shared silence, hope surged anew, washing over them like the warm evening breeze. They knew the journey ahead would not always be easy. It might sometimes feel daunting. But standing side by side, they both subconsciously understood that true wealth lay not in money, but in the bonds they were starting to rebuild, one conversation, one decision at a time. So they returned to the living room, ready to share the news with their girls. As laughter filled the space, Jake glanced at Emily, her radiant smile shining in contrast to the fading light. "Let us make this a family journey," he whispered. "Let us," she replied, and in that word hung a future full of possibility. With hearts full and hopes high, they were prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead, ready to stitch together the frayed fabric of their lives into something whole. Now don't miss this moment. You need to subscribe to the channel now to catch every exclusive story. Hit that like button right away to support the algorithm. Comment below, let us know your thoughts and feelings about this emotional ending. And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second. Your support matters.